Good evening, friends and listeners from around the world. This is Peter Michael Martinez, along with Monica Porterfield, editor-in-chief of RemnantWatch.com, and we'll be your hosts tonight on this edition of Remnant Watch. And Monica, thank you for joining us again tonight. We're going to be talking first and foremost, top story on Remnant Watch is this Florida governor and Senate elections are heading to a recount. What a shock.
Good evening, good evening. Yes. I think you called it yesterday evening when we spoke. You did say that you foresaw a recount, and this, I believe, is the beginning.
Yeah, the drama is far from over, and I think the reason why they continue these things is the same reason why we have WWE wrestling and the same reasons we have sports nonstop and other entertainment. It is just wonderful detainment for people. They like to not have to pay attention to real issues. So I think that this kind of theater just continues to, well, get ratings, I guess. They are going to continue to pump this and milk this. I heard that the person down in, I think it's Broward County, is just taking their sweet time. And of course, that's raising a lot of questions now about the veracity of that. And so what are your thoughts about this delay, this election in Florida? What are you thinking?
In Broward County, that seems to be where the drama is located, and the Nelson campaign holding off conceding due to the votes from 7 precincts, I believe the article had said, that had to be driven to election centers and manually entered from thumb drives. So I know in the article it was interesting, of the ballots already counted, more than 24,000 people voted for a governor candidate that didn't record a vote for a Senate candidate. And that was released on Wednesday, which Elias had said was extremely unusual. I don't know. I think that I had a feeling something was going to happen with Florida. Florida was such a hot topic, especially the way the voting in 2016 went and how shocked the entire nation was, and how
I have to agree. I have to agree with you. I think they're taking the loss in Florida especially hard, and they continue to struggle with Florida. I think that's what's happening here. But I also think that, again, some of these things are intentional. The drama is intentional. It keeps us talking about it. So we're going to move on. But it is interesting that we're seeing more drama still unfolding with the election. I think it's going to be a few days, maybe even weeks, before we really understand the fallout of what we just witnessed. So that's something that we're going to have to just keep an eye on. Another, of course, this is huge. This is just dominating the news right now, and was competing for top story, if you will. And that's this Marine combat veteran that went on a rampage, apparently, or allegedly, or so far that's what we've heard, in a California bar. This is, its timing seems really interesting to me. I think we gotta have to look really closely at this event. I can already see that a lot of people are digging into the details, and that usually happens right after something like this occurs. So what are your initial thoughts after hearing the initial reports about this event in Florida and California? And of course, our hearts go out to all of the victims' families and all of those that are affected by this tragedy. Our hearts and we do continue to be sensitive to this. I mean, again, we can talk about the political implications and the spiritual implications, but there are lives at stake here, and there are people getting hurt. So we just speak a blessing over those families and comfort over those that may have lost loved ones. But what are your thoughts as you watch this unfold?
Well, there was a team, I think, that was having some type of party there, I believe. I do not have the article in front of me, but when I read that this morning, my heart was broken. At the time, the news story came out, because I saw it as it came out early this morning. I was driving into work. They had not mentioned it was a Marine veteran. And what they did say, it was a 29-year-old male who drove his mother's car to the club, walked in, black glasses, black hat, black T-shirt, and just started shooting with a .45 Glock. So I think they can run with this, especially California. It happens to be that one of the young ladies that was killed, unfortunately, in there was had a famous aunt and uncle. She was the niece of somebody. I forgot who the Hollywood actors were. So of course they're on there. They're speaking in the press right now today, and so I can see where gun control laws are going to and issues and topics are going to manifest again and more. So and that's what's taking right now. Highlights in California, even though there's a 8,000 acre fire going on.
Which we're going to get to, but the point is this is dominating the news. What came to my mind is, are they already attempting to bring in again this? Every time I see these mass shooting events, the part where people get hurt, of course, we want to pray, we want to comfort the hurting, and we want these things to stop. On the other side, we're looking at it spiritually and politically going, are they trying to move toward that gun control thing again? Was this a potential false flag? Is that potentially what we're looking at? Those thoughts cross your mind. It's kind of hard not to.
It is kind of hard not to. I mean, with it being California as well, that's a very large state. And they have a lot of clout when it comes to voting matters. I do see the implications of where this could go politically and how they can run with it. Whether it was not staged, but whether it was intentional or not, what some people would call a potential false flag. I don't know. I can't speak on that, but I do see how they can run with this. So it can serve their own interest, and by them I mean political officials and elitists who want to silence people, take away freedoms and rights as far as constitutionally speaking.
Well, this is a disturbing story because, again, it touches our veterans. It begins to implicate them by extension, because essentially is saying that, veterans could be potentially unstable. This is a significant part of our population, and people that gave literally their lives in some cases to defend the freedoms of this nation. And so anything that begins to malign them, I'm always a little sensitive to being a veteran. I'm a little sensitive to anything that begins to...
Not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but you and I have both been in the military and served our country proudly, and when it comes to mental illnesses, especially in the Marine unit, it's all across the board, but when they leave the military, there's just not enough programs in place, and while the VA is getting better, it's not really good enough, and you see a lot of people getting out with all the PTSD, and these are awareness. This is an awareness issue that people need to... I
think you're right. I think this just indicates where we need to pray, and we need to ask for interventions in this area, because I agree that there are a lot of hurting people, and we know that hurting people hurt people. So if there aren't remedies that work, and just the typical things that we've been doing, just America and the world, really, we just all have to wake up to what does and doesn't work, and then we need to change it. And so I believe that this is all coming to the forefront so we can pay attention to it, pray about it, and ask for God to give us answers, to give us wisdom on how to address some of these very real issues. I mean, there are victims laying on the ground. We have a military person who is now, I assume he's dead. From what I heard, the shooter is dead. The families on the victim side, I'm sure this military family is probably going, what happened there? There's nothing but victims here. We're just left with questions and pain and heartache. So we've got to get in front of this. And I've said for a long time that many of these events are discouragement left unchecked. Suicide is discouragement that went unchecked. And so its end is your death. You cannot allow discouragement to keep going. There has to come hope. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. And so you just wonder how many people are reaching this place of despair where they're really doing some of these crazy things. And so we just need to continue to pray for folks' intervention to happen, for ministry to happen. This is one we missed. This is an opportunity that got missed to pray for this person, to intervene on their behalf. And we need to be on the lookout for the next one, for the next person that may be on the edge and struggling with emotions and health issues, and be sensitive.
See something, say something.
Well, and I think that's where the body of Christ really needs to be much more active in praying for people and encouraging one another. Because again, like I said, encouragement is a powerful thing. What did he say? Forsake not the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting. That means to encourage someone toward an end. Exhorting one another, and all the more as we see the day approaching. So if you see the day approaching and you're watching programs like this, exhort your brethren. This kind of stuff can be prevented. It's just terrible tragedy. This is just heartbreaking to me personally as an encourager, because I always think, if I could have got in there, maybe I could have, talked him out of it, or it just breaks my heart when I see stories like this. And I'm hoping that the more we talk about this kind of thing, the more we'll get active in ministering love and life to people before it's too late. Because now it's too late for this guy and for those victims and for this community. It's too late now. This person's already gone off the edge. So moving on, we've got more stuff going on with these Antifa protesters. Now, I don't know if you were paying attention to this. I was watching the news last night. You probably didn't even hear about this. You're probably... let me tell you what happened, and this was on USA Today. Antifa protesters were chanting outside of Fox's Tucker Carlson's home, and they even broke the door. So,
what?
Yes, I'm not even kidding you.
Are you serious?
And it's so funny when we were doing the gather up for today's broadcast. You weren't sure how many stories, and I said, well, you haven't heard about this one, but we got to run. I'll tell you about it on the air. This group of angry Antifa protesters gathered outside of Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson's home on Wednesday evening. The anti-fascist group, possibly associated with Smash Racism DC or something like that, chanted, "Tucker Carlson, we will fight. We know where you sleep at night." I want you to imagine having a crowd outside your door shouting. This reminds me of Sodom and Gomorrah. Let them out here. Tucker Carlson, we will fight. We know where you sleep at night. Unbelievable. Outside of Carlson's Washington home, where his wife and children, I'm sure, live, according to Fox News. And in a video posted online, the group can also be heard saying, "Racist scumbag, leave town." Can you believe this is going on?
You know what's so amazing is that today on social media and Facebook, I didn't see that story once. You know what story I did see? I saw the stories of Trump supporters, and it had pictures of very angry faces harassing Democrat voters and gosh, I can't remember who it was, but it was somebody running on the Democrat Party for Senate, or for the House, I'm sorry. And so that's what they were showing. I didn't even get into the article. I just saw the headlines and the pictures, and there were at least 3 of them.
I want you to imagine this, because I'm looking at right now on the screen for the listeners who are watching. We're talking about, got to be about 30 people, maybe 25, 30 people. Some of them holding signs, standing outside the man's home. I understand you have a political position or an idea or an ideology, but let's just think this through, okay? So Tucker Carlson is a newscaster. And let's just say that because you were so effective, you just changed what he was going to say. In fact, you know what? He saw that protest last night and he just came to his senses. And he decided that he's going to change all of his opinions because you protested outside of his home. Do you really think, first of all, that's never going to work? Not only that, but if they did change, that would only encourage more of this craziness.
Yeah.
This is not going in a good direction if they believe this is the way forward. I don't know how they expect that can't work, because you're essentially asking people to capitulate. You're not bringing people to a table to say, let's talk about an idea, or let's discuss our grievances or issues, or do counter, broadcast. Nope. They're just coming right to your home to yell at you, to make you change your mind. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Well, let me ask you a question, sir. Who funds Antifa?
Well, you start getting into who's funding all this, which I think is what's been hinted at now that the elections are over. My sense is there are going to be some things revealed about who's doing what that are going to be decimating to current power structure. So I think this is all a setup, but I do think it's interesting to watch it as it unfolds. And so they're sort of stepping right into it by doing this kind of thing, because they're literally asking for a confrontation with federal authorities, don't you think?
Yes, I do. It's just going to bring out more investigations. Hold on, I brought my tinfoil hat. Let me put that on real quick.
Yeah, we're going to get conspiracy theorists. We're going to become conspiracy theorists right now. They're going to start investigations. Well, I don't think they can avoid it. I don't think they can avoid looking into if there is funding, if there's people, especially from outside the country, that are, well, let's face it, attempting to interfere, right, in the operation of the country. Or here you have a whole group of people attempting to intimidate the press. They're attempting to intimidate a member of the free press because they disagree with his point of view. The irony of anti-fascists coming to someone's home to yell at them and protest because they don't like their opinion. The irony of that is so befuddling to me that they can't see their own. They can't see their own irony. I don't understand how that can continue in the mindset of so many people. How can they think that they're against fascism when that is a fascist act in itself? To come and demand by crowd that someone change their opinion, or what, or face that crowd. Is that the threat? It sure seems like it. It seems like the inference is or else. What do you think?
I think the truth shall set you free, and I believe that there are some in this organization that are blind, and they don't really realize the implications of what they're doing. If I sit there and I observe it from a much higher viewpoint and what Antifa is doing, I think, unfortunately, they're pawns in the game. Not all of them, but many of them, and they think they're doing the right thing. But if they don't know what the definition of fascism is, I don't know what to say.
Exactly, I can't help it. As a matter of fact, I was watching a video yesterday where a young lady was informed mid-rant that Nazis are socialists, and it just was it was kind of fun to behold. I wish we had the video, but it was really interesting. And you just said it. The truth will set you free. I really believe that we need a wake up. Well, moving on to the next story here, we've got another big event that happened. I mean, talk about wasting no time. President Trump is slamming the abortion rights community and slams. They're of course upset. Planned Parenthood is upset with Trump for stopping taxpayer-funded abortions. They're saying he hates women. You're a woman. Does he hate women?
No. No, he, as I believe, he may not have been a righteous man, but he's righteously appointed. And I do believe that it's, as time progresses in this position he's in, he's going to change. I believe that with my soul and spirit. And so with this plan that he's doing, it's supposed to address not only the tax funding for abortion, but also the requirement that Obama had made that health insurance plans include abortion. And it was opposed, I think, by the what was that group? It was a Roman Catholic charity, the Little Sisters of the Poor. They're eventually, I guess, going to make it to Supreme Court. And so I think Trump is backing that, and he vowed to protect companies and organizations with religious funding, religious reasons, objections to the funding of the destruction of the unborn. And I think it's absolutely, obviously correct. I shouldn't have to be forced to pay for somebody's abortion. Rather than, there's people out there, nonprofit organizations like Alternative in Colorado, where they'll educate you and give you options rather than do that. And
Right.
those are the nonprofit organizations I would rather be funding,
Right.
Forced to fund if needed, rather than what we were under that mandate.
Correct. Well, it says here in this article, the new rule doesn't ban abortions or end abortions or do anything to prevent women who want an abortion from getting one, to end the life of their unborn child if you are that dead set on that. But what the new rule does do is ensure that Americans that especially don't agree with it don't have to be forced to pay for it. And I really think this distinction is really important to keep driving home, because so many people are using that to rile up divisions, and essentially this is really more of a public policy matter. If somebody wants to and is determined in America to end the life of their child, sadly enough, that is relatively easy to do. Unfortunately, what has, as a result of this entitlement, happened is that the rest of the people have been dragged into this personal choice that don't want to be. And
exactly. The bill, that was out there, there was a lack of transparency when Obama had passed it, and it was transparency that was needed, because a lot of people, taxpayers, were funding the abortion and they were unknowingly doing it.
Right.
And so transparency was needed, and I think it was obviously a very justified move.
More light. And the more we understand the way it actually works, the more we're like, hey, we don't like this part. Now, again, maybe we need to revisit some of these decisions, and we certainly believe that. We certainly are pro-life 100%. There is just no room for discussion in what I believe the household of faith. But at the same time, we also recognize that we are in the world but not of it. So we're not going to go out there. We don't thump, right? So we live in peace with all men. If you want to do that, that's not something that we're going to encourage. We're not going to drive you. We're not going to pay for the gas. We're not going to help. Why? Because we don't want to encourage it. And so to force, the other half of the country, if you will, that doesn't agree with it, to do it anyway by default, I think is a very, very, in fact, they've lost in court people are winning in court defending their right to not participate, and they're winning because they're right. You can't force that. You can ask, but to force it, I think that's what a lot of this is starting to come down to, is we're starting to understand that you can't just do some of this stuff and force it on people. I can't take 10 of my neighbors and say, hey, we're going to all vote because we think Monica's got too much stuff, and we're going to take a vote, and we're going to vote on who's going to divvy up what parts of Monica's stuff.
Robin Hood.
And we've all decided, all your neighbors, Monica, we all got together, and we all decided that we're all going to, take up half of your backyard, and we're going to do this. If we try it, we're going to run into some resistance, don't you think? Because you don't inherently have the right, no matter how many people you get together, to just go boss around other people. And that goes both ways. So
yes,
I think
I have lived in one of those HOA environments.
right, where people think they're entitled to just run other people's lives, and this is dangerous thinking.
Yes.
And so I think that it goes both ways. I think you got to be careful with. We're going to tell you can't do something. I think that's really something dangerous as well. Although we don't agree with it, and there's consequences for your choice. But it's a whole other thing to drag people into paying for it. And so I think this is a very good move. I think this is moving in the right direction. And again, anything that keeps bringing the conversation up so we can actually talk about what we're talking about. Hello, funding the killing of babies. So as long as we can keep bringing it back to this conversation, that by itself will have its own impact on abortion.
Well, I mean, as far as the devil's advocate goes, and somebody who would be speaking from that side, I mean, it even has stated in the press that President Trump, he just upheld the principles of the Hyde Amendment to prevent the use of the tax dollars to pay for abortion coverage that was in this
Well, of course,
law.
this is it. It just goes to show you that if righteously applied, many of the laws that were passed in the United States were righteously done. Many of them are good laws if they're read and interpreted properly. Corrupt minds do corrupt things. So corrupt minds look for loopholes. Corrupt minds look for ways to exploit laws. That's not what they meant to do. So a lot of times, because we have a spirit problem. And as we keep talking about, we have a war in the spirit. This is not a natural thing. These are demonic things that are looking for loopholes to mess things up. And so we go and pass a law and say, hey, we're all going to work together, and this is what we've decided. And we're doing it real nice. And then somebody comes along and decides, I'm going to take advantage of Clause 3, Subsection 2, because you didn't think about putting and or in, and now we've got a crisis on our hands. Folks, this is...
Not only that, but he also followed through on his campaign promise now to these faith-based groups.
Exactly. And that's what we're got to keep an eye on, is that, A, do you keep your promises? B, are you moving in the right direction? Are you moving toward life? Because that's what we keep praying for as the remnant, that everything keeps moving toward life. And frankly, just continue to have the discussion. We believe the truth sets people free, right? So just keep exposing what's really happening. I love this movie that came out, that Gosnell movie. I love the fact that there's more and more graphics that are being lent to this fight. These fallen angels came down and taught mankind how to kill babies in the womb. And this has been going on for thousands of years. And it's probably high time we get better at dealing with these spirits. So there's that. Moving on.
Giants.
Yeah, exactly. And they're manifesting as giants in other ways. And let's face it, if you do a little bit of homework at what they do with these aborted fetuses, if you did any homework and then you realize where they're putting the derivatives of this stuff, you would understand why it's not even just about saving the babies, it's also about saving humanity.
Yeah,
these people are crazy.
People are ingesting it and don't even know.
The level of crazy in our world is almost it's beyond words. Some of what I discover on a daily basis. I don't want to talk about that anymore. We're moving on. We're moving on to old people not having not being okay. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, 85 years old. They say she fell and broke her ribs. What do you think? You think they're covering up something, or you think she really fell? What's going on here?
I think it could be either. I have seen that happen historically. They say one thing when really that person was in critical condition. And I know that for a fact. So I do believe it could be either. But what a coincidence!
It could be a cover story. I heard rumors that she was going to be out as of January anyway, and didn't want to say anything. Didn't want to affect the election. Didn't want to. I think a lot of things we're going to see in the next season is stuff that was not talked about or revealed because they wanted to not influence the election. And now, as soon as the election's over, it's like, okay, you're fired, and you're the, we're just seeing all kinds of stuff now. So here we're about to watch this unfold, and there was a prophetic word.
Yes, there was.
That Mr. Trump would replace or put on the court as many as 5 judges. Are we about to see number 3? And I remember when I first got wind of that prophetic word in 2016, I thought, well, that will be quite the effort if he can pull that off in one or in 2 terms, even 2 terms, even the 8 years. That's a big shift to occur in a place that, now again, for me personally, this was a big deal because this started a lot for me when I saw the Supreme Court make their decision in 2015. That started intercession at another level for me and for the ministry and for the household of faith in the United States. And so to watch him rearrange that court and him being the Lord, not any one man, but just watching him orchestrate events to rearrange that is quite something to behold. So we're going to keep an eye on this story. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, 85, may be stepping down soon. We're going to be watching that with great interest. You sent me up a story about this Butte fire going on, and it grows to 8,000 acres.
So far.
What is going on with that?
Well, I guess Northern California town, 26,000 residents, left thousands of people without power. They were even having to get out of their car and run by foot. By about 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 0% of it was contained. If you look at the map, if you go on the web and you look at the fire map for California, it ranges from from the top of California all the way down to the bottom of California. It's crazy. And if you talk to somebody who lives in California, you're like, oh, that's normal. I mean, they're numb to it. But this one, it manifested so fast, it took people by surprise. To where they quickly had to leave. And if you see the pictures on the internet, how thick and dark the plume of smoke is that filled the sky, it was crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm as you're speaking, I'm going through this article, and I'm noticing. Of course, they've got a few pictures on there, and there's some video. So for those of you that want to watch, this is why we put these things on Remnant Watch. We can't always take the time to go through each story, but we try to highlight them so that you're aware of what's going on and you can pray, but also to be aware of what, these are all coming at the same time. It's just, this is nonstop in our world. So here, while other things are going on, oh, by the way, there's an 8,000 acre fire that's moving so fast, it's scary. And it's all up and down the West Coast. We're seeing fires. We're seeing all kinds of judgments, really. I don't know what else to call them. And there's things that are happening that I think we need to continue to be aware of. And obviously, there's going to be, Mike, what do you think this is going to do to populations? I mean, this has got to shift where people live. This is major between the hurricanes in the south and the fires in the west. Wow.
Well, there have been many articles out there, not to go off on a tangent, but there are many articles that have been out there in 2018, and I'm talking about official studies, ones that were done by accredited sources, saying coastlines and islands are not going to be safe in the next decade, 10 to 50 years. Even 14 islands. One article said 14 islands are going to be gone in a decade, most of them off of Georgia, a couple in the Caribbean, I think one in the Pacific, and one already did disappear on Hawaii. So it's just, and then the fires and what's happening, I think there is a prophetic statement, things that happen in the spiritual first and then that happens in the physical.
I think there's something to it, and that's exactly why I bring it up, because, the heat is extending beyond the fire, so the message is clear. If you're sitting in the heavens trying to give people a message, fire's one way to do it. And so I just look at this and I think there's a lot more going on here than we realize. These are horrific blazes, and the landscape is changing. Where people can and can't live. I mean, this is not just about where your house is at the moment. This is also where future houses would go. This is also rearranging the landscape. So there's a lot that we need to continue to keep an eye on here, but pray for those out west, saints, who are in the path of these blazes. Pray for your brothers and sisters, because it is getting dangerous out west, especially in California, where these fires are continuing. So moving on, I saw this story about the United Nations, and this tied in with something we were talking about yesterday concerning from 2015, when I felt what I felt and I felt the presence of the Lord. The word of the Lord was that he was going to give grace to this nation, essentially giving us an opportunity to repent, an opportunity to turn. And now we look at this, and of course I thought about Hezekiah's 15 years, and so that puts you to 2030, and you start thinking about that, and you're not sure, well, what is that? Is that possible? Is that true? Is there something to that? And you're praying it through, because you don't have an accurate understanding. You're seeing through a glass darkly, as the scripture says, right? So here we see a statement from the United Nations. They basically want a one world government by 2030. Well, that ties together.
No, you don't say.
Yeah, and so, what a coinky dink that they would come out with that on the 5th of November. And again, I didn't see this just till today. So, somebody else saw this earlier. I didn't. And of course, in 2015, they had reached the 70 years from their original starting point, as far as they were concerned. And so this was all, about transforming the world, right? This was what they were all about. This was what they were projecting and what they were trying to speak. But of course, they have a different plan, don't they? And the scripture told us about this plan thousands of years before they try to pull it off. So we're watching it, slow motion, watching it come together in front of us. And this is interesting. So folks, again, this is Bible prophecy coming to pass right in front of you. United Nations is openly and doggedly attempting to bring in a one world government. That means that, how you have these migrants on the border? If you decide you don't want them, but the United Nations decides you do want them, you got to take them anyway because they run things instead of your own country. This was what the United States and other countries gave up when they didn't realize that this was their end game. And so now the reality of this choice is sort of coming home to roost. And I think nations are waking up to the real end game of the United Nations. And it doesn't look like they're going to be able to pull that off. What do you think?
Well, if Father has anything to do with it, and I believe he does, I don't think they will. I believe that there's things destined to happen as he deems it. But that's with the Georgia Guidestones and all the things that they have on there regarding, you can pinpoint it all together. The UN agenda, their 2030 or Agenda 21, or what they called it before. It's, depopulation and other things that they want to do. I do know that,
I think they gave up, real quickly, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think they gave up on the trying to get it all done by 2021 when there was when there was a divine intervention.
Yeah, so 2030, now is the time. But I will say I am seeing that date more and more sporadically throughout, all the research that I do.
So am I.
Whether it's financial, whether it's government, whatever it is, that seems to be an important year.
Yeah,
so
we're gonna be paying attention. Well, we're not going anywhere because we do have that whole live forever thing, but we're gonna watch and see how it all unfolds. And that you're absolutely right. I'm agreeing with you. That is an interesting date window, and we're gonna have to pay attention to that.
Yes.
Moving on. There's this last thing I wanted to point out. We could talk about the migrants, and we can talk about some of these other, again, election issues. But the thing that really was a blessing to me, and I like to finish these broadcasts with a blessing, this is an answer to prayer, and that is that Asia Bibi, in her case in Pakistan, the Pakistani woman who was acquitted of blasphemy, was actually flown out of the country. There was
today?
Yeah. Here's the story. It says a Pakistani Christian woman acquitted of blasphemy 8 years after being sentenced to death has been flown out of the country for security reasons. Amid tight security, Asia Bibi. Now I want you to think angels, okay, saints? I want you to think angels. Think about this. Amid tight security, angelic hosts, Asia Bibi left a detention facility in Punjab province for a flight to the capital city of Islamabad, officials said. Troops guarded the roads, leaving the airport from which she departed, and her lawyer said that she was being flown out of Pakistan with her immediate family, but he did not know where they were going. Well, they're going anywhere but there. So they're fleeing. Well, that's good news. That answers our prayer. As you know, there was a big protest in Pakistan over her acquittal, and of course that was the reason why they had to use these extraordinary measures. So, I want you to take a look at this picture, folks, on the screen. Despite all this overwhelming opposition, and despite the fact that this is what they would be left at home to deal with, nevertheless, this woman was ferried out of the country with her family, and that is an answer to your intercession. You are the remnant. You are the militant remnant, and when you pray, things happen. And this came to our attention. We started to pay attention to this story because of the dynamics. And, of course, it drew our attention, and look what happened. When our attention got drawn to it, change occurred. And I just want to keep encouraging you to be awake, because your awakeness, if I can say it like that, is what's making change happen. It's the fact that your light is shining. It doesn't matter that you're not doing anything yourself. It's that you're awake and aware. Your awareness level is lending strength. I can't fully explain it. I don't understand it. I don't understand what scientists are discovering as they see that observation affects matter. All I know is it's working. The more we're awake, the more we're aware, the more we're praying about these issues, change occurs. And so this just warmed my heart. Monica, isn't this a great testimony?
It is amazing. It is amazing. It really is. I hadn't seen that today. I did not know that. So that's just awesome testimony to hear, as far as the father is concerned, and him protecting her, getting her out of there safely. I will say, if people are awake, they have the opportunity to be light and salt on this earth. And when you're aware of something, you may not even know it and be praying in the spirit over her. When you become salt without even trying, when you are awake and in the know.
I agree. I think even the sigh, it says that Lot sighed, just even the sigh, because you saw something and you know that that's wrong, and you sigh and you go but these are intercessions that without words, groanings which cannot be uttered. Okay, these are words that can't be spoken because they come from so deep. So when you're aware of something and you go, that's horrible, and you go, and you have that, that's intercession. And I tell you, there's something going on here but our awareness, being awake is important. So again, Remnant Watch is here, folks, for you. We do this so that you're aware of these things, and so you can not only encourage one another, but also shine your light before men, that they would see your good work, especially in this hour, and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Thank you so much, Monica, for joining us once again.
My pleasure.
It's going to be an interesting season as we walk this out. We look forward to seeing you on our next edition. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We love you all so much. May God bless each and every one of you. We'll talk to you again soon.